How to Write a Killer Oxbridge Law Personal Statement by yours truly. And so a bit about me, my credentials. So my name is Jake Pronger, and last year I was in your position, scouring the internet for resources to help me apply to Oxford. I went to the local state selective school, so that's a grammar school, and it didn't have too much history of progressing students onto Oxbridge. So that was me in year 7. And actually that guy next to me got in for medicine at Cambridge. So at the start of year 12, I decided that I would go to Oxford no matter what, and that ended up happening. I entered 12 national and international essay competitions, and I did pretty well. Was a finalist in a few and won 2 in the end. I also did alright at A levels. I got 2 A stars and 2 A's. And the EPQ, if anybody's interested, is about environmental law and how we can use the law to hopefully combat climate change. And that's me in year 13 after finishing my exams. So yeah, I'll begin studying for a BA in jurisprudence, which is, by the way, a qualifying law degree, even though it's not an LB. They just call it that because they want to be special. And specifically, it's Law Course 2. So at Oxford, there are 2 courses, the 3-year course and the 4-year course. And the 4-year course, you go for a year abroad in a European country, and for me, it's Spain. Yeah, so I'll be there like next week, hopefully. That's my college. Yeah. So what are Oxbridge looking for in your personal statement? So firstly, they want people who genuinely have a passion for the subject. And the best way of showing that you really want to spend 3 or 4 years and over 30 grand studying the subject is to do super-curricular activities. These are activities that we'll talk about later, but essentially they're activities that have you engaging with university level materials when you're still in college or sixth form. They also want people with the skills and attributes tailored to the course, because this is what's going to let you succeed. A good way of producing these skills or improving them is to do work experience, but a caveat on the work experience is that not everybody has the same opportunity to work experience opportunities, so they have to be earned, and I'll talk about that later. So people who are ready for university style learning, and I'm sure you'll be aware if you're applying to Oxford and Cambridge, they have an interview process. So you'll be invited to interview in December time after your application, and it's basically a nice way of thinking about it is a chat with a tutor to see if you fit the tutorial system at the 2 universities. So less than being intimidating, it's actually more of an opportunity for you to see, test out if these are the universities that you would thrive in. And then finally, a bit of admin. The UCAS submission deadline is 6 PM on the 16th of October this year. So last year was the 15th, so just make sure you don't get mixed up. So now on to super-curricular activities. I think these are the most important things to include in your personal statement. By the way, I'm kind of reading the chat as well at the same time, so if I see a question that I can answer, I'll answer it. So according to Hertford College, Oxford, which is one of the 30 undergraduate colleges that you can apply to as an undergrad, a super-curricular activity is a super-curricular, meaning that it takes your knowledge and engagement above and beyond what you do in school. So it's still part of the curriculum, it just stretches that curriculum to university level. So that's differing from extracurricular activities, which are things you do outside of the curriculum, like football, cricket, whatever sports you play. And this will be important when we come to analysing my personal statement, because you'll see I don't include any extracurriculars, even though I do play like football, cricket, because when you're applying to Oxford and Cambridge, I feel, in my opinion, that they care more about your academic pursuit of the subject that you're applying to study. So a few examples would be reading books and journals and not introductory text. So because you're engaging with degree level material, they want to see that you can handle it. So a nice example of something I read is called the Great Debates series. Specifically, I read the Great Debates in jurisprudence. So if you're interested in studying law, just search up Great Debates in criminal law or tort law, and that's a really good non-introductory material that students at Cambridge, for example, get in their first term. And then another example would be visiting museums and courts. In the UK, you have a legal right to visit a court if it's not a closed hearing. So just go to your local magistrate's court and walk in and see what the barristers do. And that's another way of seeing if you really want to be a lawyer. Watching films and documentaries, make sure they're legal. Listen to legal podcasts. I listen to something called the Jurisprudence Podcast because that was the name of my course. I found out later that jurisprudence stands for the philosophy of law. So, make sure it's related to the degree that you want to study. Attending online seminars and lectures. The good thing about Oxford and Cambridge, they offer so many resources. If you go to the University of Oxford's website, the events page, they have a whole calendar of events that you can sign up to for free. Some of them, they actually invite you to the university so you can see firsthand if you would like to study there, if you would enjoy that. Then these are the ones that are most important in my opinion. So entering academic competitions. These are essay competitions mostly, and on Questo actually I think there's a room or somewhere on the Discord where you can find an essay competition database which is live. So it's always updated with the latest essay competitions that you can enter. And the same is true for residentials and summer schools. So these don't have to be at Oxford and Cambridge. But if you're engaging with that university experience firsthand, like living like a student for a week, or even if it's for a few days, you're in a much better position to give your thoughts on what it'd be like to study there, and then that's what they look at in your interview. And both those links will take you to the spaces where there's a live database for basically every summer school and essay competition I could find on the internet. And then work experience schemes. So I said that these give you the skills that the vocational side of the course looks for, so what it's like to be a barrister or a solicitor. However, they're not mandatory for your personal statement because, like I said, not everybody has the same access to like lawyers or barristers. But try your best. I remember I got a mini pupillage at Chambers in Gray's Inn by just emailing like hundreds of barristers' chambers, and eventually one got back to me, but I got aired by most of them. And there's no shame in that, you're just putting yourself out there. Finally, acquiring a hinterland of knowledge. So hinterland is a German word for, it stems from German, but it means like a general wealth of knowledge. So I would say this is how you show your personality. Like, just the films you watch, the media you consume, the books you read, it builds your hinterland, which you're able to discuss at interview, and basically rounds your personality, and that's what they're looking for. They're looking for you as an individual rather than somebody who's like an exams machine. There's a really good book that you might read for your personal statement called Letters to a Law Student, written by a man called Nicholas McBride, and he's a fellow in law at Pembroke College, Cambridge. And he says in the book that if he had it his way, he would admit students to Cambridge based on how high they score in the game of Trivial Pursuit. So that just goes to show that like being a well-rounded individual is very important for your personal statement and application to Oxford and Cambridge in general. So now the personal statement structure. Lots of people get confused or worried about how they should structure their personal statement, and hopefully this will guide you a little bit. So it's a maximum of 4,000 characters with 47 lines of text, whatever one comes first, so make sure you meet those requirements. UCAS will physically not allow you to input anymore. So now, if you're applying to Oxford and Cambridge specifically, I think it should be 90% academic. I think mine was actually 99% academic and 10% anything else. And so this can only be 40 characters. Maybe at the end of your personal statement, just tying it into how you are a well-rounded individual and not like a robot, not an autonomous, because that's what they don't want. So a hook, sentence, or intro. So instead of having a lengthy introduction, have one sentence which reflects your fascination for the subject, for law specifically, and explains why you want to spend 3 or 4 years and a large amount of money studying it. I'll show you mine in a minute. So have a clear structure. For me, this was 1, a point of law, something about the law that interests you. 2, an example of how you've explored this, reading a book, podcast, work experience, whatever it may be. And the most important thing you can do is analyze this, because if you don't, you're just given a list of things you've done. You need to give your thoughts and opinions about how this will make you a better student at the university, and just like what you think about it. What are your reflections on it? So a final conclusive statement to round off your personal statement. It only needs to be 1 sentence, doesn't have to be long, and maybe here's where you can include some extracurricular activities. I think though, mostly, if you've played sport at the national level or for a very, very famous club, then maybe it might be worth including that. But if not, I would say tend to stick to an academic statement. So now we're going to go on to my personal statement. I was really proud of mine. It took me 23 drafts in total. But I think it does some of these things that I've identified, and obviously it helped me get the place. So what fascinates me most about the law is its ability to synthesize abstract philosophical concepts into a practical means for arranging society. That was my hook sentence, like punching the admissions tutor in the face saying, you know, this is what I love about law and why I want to study it for 4 years. On the right here, you'll see is a resource provided by Hertford College, Oxford, and it's the stages of your personal statement. So number 1, what have you done? What were you struck by? That's the reflection. What did you do to find out more? How did you take this further? And what questions were raised? So I think that's a good little structure to follow, and it's what I did in mine, and I've color coded it for you. Yeah. So the punch introduction. Don't use passion. Don't use the dreaded P word. It's just a cliche. Avoid cliches. We'll get to that later. And don't waste time introducing what you're going to write about, because the tutors know it's a personal statement for law. They have all that background on your UCAS, so they read thousands of statements already. They know what you're going to say or thereabouts. Then I guess my point of law was jurisprudence. So this is the aspect of law that interests me. Again, this is the philosophy of law, and the example that I gave was listening to Scott Shapiro's jurisprudence podcast and reading the book Letters to a Law Student. And notice how I haven't cited the book, or like said it's written by Nick McBride. They know that you don't have to do that. It's just wasting characters, and you only have 4,000. Then this is what I was struck by, or what I thought about, and an example that I used. So how I explored this further was essay competitions. That was a thread of my personal statement. So in this case, it was the Robinson College Essay Prize, which is also on the Questa essay database, by the way. And the question was, law and morality should never collide. Discuss. I don't state that explicitly here because it's not needed. It's gauged from what my analysis is. So I discovered that to study law, one must have an adequate answer to the question, what is law? A philosophically stimulating question of great practical significance, investigating the nature of the most important human social institution. A clear answer is vital and guides the judicial approach in the most difficult of cases. So that's my reflections on why the question of what is law is important. And it's a question that's asked in a mandatory module at Oxford, so also showing that I'm aware of the course I'm applying to, and then showing that I think that the law is important, and that's why we should learn about it. So now my analysis about the essay prize. So is my critical insight into what I think rather than what a scholar has said. Because they're not interested in knowing what Shapiro's planning theory of law is. They probably already read his, maybe even know the guy, or maybe even wrote the book themselves. So you need to tell them what you thought about it. And for me, I concluded that a necessary feature of the law is its moral aim. When it produces moral benefit to society, it is not celebrated, it's simply considered proper functioning. So that's a critical insight into an academic's opinions on the law. And you have to justify it, obviously. And so obviously, as you'll know, in the UK's constitution is wholly customary. That's an arguable point. But I saw that as an issue with this scholar's argument because he's I think a Canadian jurisprudent. Finally, what questions were raised? So, however, I was critical of his master plan thesis as it cannot account for the English common law constitution. That shows I'm aware of how the English legal system works, and also makes my paragraph flow into the next section, which we'll read in a second. So yeah, it flows nicely. Now a top tip, if you have lots of practical experiences or books that you've read, you can double up on them if they have similar points of law that you're discussing. So both Letters to a Law Student and the podcast, they both discuss jurisprudence. So that is why I doubled them up. So now the second paragraph. So again, the same color-coded situation going on. So the point of law here is the judgment and how judges come to their decisions, if morality has any basis or should have any basis in those conclusions, and which is something I referenced in my first paragraph. So it flows nicely. So What About Law is another book. Again, I didn't reference it. It's not needed. And the case Brown is a very famous case, R and Brown, about men who engage in sadomasochistic activities. You also find that the law has very interesting stories, so just go out there and engage with as many of them as you can. And then the next part is my analysis. See how you can flip it. So my analysis comes before the example because I'm talking about directly from the first paragraph something that gives an example in the second one, and then the analysis flowed more naturally. So you can switch it up, it's not rigid. So I analysed this point of law by discussing again another essay that I'd entered for the New College of the Humanities, and I give a little backdrop on it, or specifically zooming in on the part of the essay, because you can't discuss the whole thing, nor can you discuss an entire book. You have to zoom in on one aspect that is the most interesting thing for you, because you just simply don't have enough characters. So I critique the judgment, which is, again, maybe it's controversial if you're suggesting that these judges who have studied for years and years, if you don't agree with them. But it's nice to be controversial because it stands out. Obviously, be careful with how controversial you are, but it makes you more memorable. And I would also have qualified the argument by saying arguably. So arguably, Mill's harm principle suggests that the law should only interfere when one's actions are likely to cause harm to another. That's a very basic tenet of the law that I was asked at interview to justify. So now, what I was struck by is included in my essay competition. Again, this is the thread of my personal statement, and I link it closely to super-curricular activities, and they can overlap. So it's not a bad thing if you have a little bit of overlap. It means that the statement flows well. But don't repeat yourself, because you don't have the characters. So if you've already discussed an idea in your analysis, don't rehash that point in your reflection, I would say. And here is my top tip for this paragraph: don't oversimplify, generalize, or scapegoat arguments in your personal statement. Be aware of the nuanced view, because that is just more sophisticated. So Mill's harm principle has been around for years and years. It was promoted by a guy called John Stuart Mill, maybe you're familiar with him. And it's debated hotly in the legal sphere. So acknowledge that by putting in one word, arguably. It just qualifies what you're trying to say. On the third paragraph, this is my environmental law part, because that's something that I'm passionate about. So I went to an Oxford residential. That's where the picture was from at the start, by the way. And here, in my point of law, I've been able to reflect that I think sustainable societies are important by saying that. So reflected by the sustainable society in which I want to live. This shows the tutors that I'm somebody who's aware and engaged with environmentalism without saying, I like environmentalism. It flows better this way, I think. It shows them rather than telling them who I am as a person, namely that sustainability is a big concern of mine. And then you'll notice here how the structure is being flipped. Again, the question that it raises, it comes straight after the point of law. So here I reflect on how previously I thought the environmental law worked, to show that tutors, I possess a flexibility of thought when confronted with new information. And this is the main thing that they're testing at interview. They're going to question everything you say, or most things you say. And if you're rigid in your thought because you're stubborn, that's not going to come across well. When you're presented with new information that changes the material facts, you have to change your mind if you can justify why that change of mind has been brought about. So that's what I do here. And it shows that I've bettered myself throughout the application process, because at the end of the day, it's an academic journey. If you don't get in, it's not the end of the world, but you'll be better for applying to Oxford and Cambridge, because the process is so demanding that you will come out of it a better person, I think. So it's just a win-win, even if you don't get in. But I'm sure all of you will. Previously, I'd thought of environmental law as derived from legislation which is immediately resolves contemporary environmental issues. That's showing what I thought originally. And now I'm analysing, through my experience on the residential, what I know the law to be. So I attended a lecture by Professor Fisher, and it gave me insight into environmental problems and how they ought to be addressed. And she mentioned how the law is not a magic wand, you don't wave the law or legislation and then fix environmental problems, because they're so broad in political, social and geographical scope. Environments transgress nation states, and so that's why they have an added layer of complexity. And I was able to make use of her words when applying to the college that she is a fellow in. So that is, I think, a good way of getting your foot in the door if you're using material that they actually research. But you have to make sure that you understand that material, because if they interview you, luckily, well, I guess unluckily, I really like the professor, didn't interview me, but if she had, I assume she would have picked up on that straight away and asked me to explain myself, so make sure you can. And now at the very end here, we get the reflection, well, what I was struck by, and the example of how I explored this further. So I went on a work experience placement at Cornerstone Barristers, like I said. It took me ages to get it. I was emailing every barrister in the world that I knew. Yeah, I'm going to go through most of my personal statement. There's only 2 more slides though. Also highlights the necessary skills that you need in practice to excel, and how these can be transferred to a law degree itself. Again, showing that I have that capability to engage in the law academically. Okay, top tip: show current awareness of contemporary issues. So the Supreme Court is going to discuss this case, and that happened after I'd had my placement. So I had to carry on researching the case to find out that the Supreme Court had allowed the appeal to the higher courts, and so I was able to put that in my personal statement to show that I'm up to aware of current affairs in law. So now this is the final conclusive slide. So now the point of law is Roman law. This is important because at Oxford and Cambridge, I think certainly for Oxford, Roman law is mandatory, so you have to study it no matter what. And it's seen a little bit as dated, but I argue here why it'd be interesting to still learn it, because it yields principled and pragmatic solutions to issues that continue to appear in modern legal practice. So it shows like why I want to apply to Oxford and Cambridge specifically. Now again, the example of how I took this further. So I'm able to make use of lateral thinking. Is a key skill that lawyers use. Again, I don't say I possess the skill of lateral thinking, I just show that I have it by making a link to a modern case, which is Nettleship and Weston. It's very famous. And then again, the thread of my personal statement is the competition, which I won, so that's like the impactful thing. The Keys Explore essay prize, and I explain a little bit about what I wrote. Name dropping grabs the tutor's attention, so I would always recommend you do that. Yeah, and I show how I'm able to grapple with and assimilate complex statute in order to construct a precise and clear argument. So these skills here that I've just mentioned demonstrate the 5 skills named on the Oxford website to study law. So remember that you're applying for an academic degree, so don't overdo the vocational aspects. Make sure your statement is tilted towards the academic pursuit of law. And now the final conclusive sentence leaves a question to the tutor to ponder on, hopefully in their mind, to think about later when they're considering whether or not they should let you in. So I wanted to emphasize my academic journey had been totally independent. I hadn't received any help. I'd done this all myself, or I'd received little help, to show that I'm self-motivated, and I've given an explicit indication of this in my final line. Yeah, because if I study a law degree, hopefully I'll be able to answer the questions that I have or raise in my personal statement. So my academic journey has independently inspired a thirst for knowledge, which I hope to quench in a legal context at university. That's conclusive. Top tip, use active language. So make sure your language is active, so like attending, arguing, like active verbs, and it highlights that you're not only an active person, but that you still wish to learn, and that you're only at the start of your legal careers. Okay, so now that's my personal statement. I hope you enjoyed it, but my paragraph scaffold is as follows. So select something you've done. It can be anything. You'll think maybe you don't have enough examples, but trust me, you have more than enough. And you just have to think really hard about what you've done. Reflect on this. What were you struck by? What was the most impactful thing out of this example? Sorry, I'm a little bit ill. What did you find? What did you do to find out more? Did you read another book? Did you go on a residential? Did you enter an essay competition? And what questions did this raise? And then extra, like for extra analysis, if you can, what struck you about this question? Can you provide an answer to the academic? Hopefully you can, because obviously they're trying to see how you think. And so a few examples would be reading, attending, listening, participating, for example. I was struck by X, Y, and Z, or particularly interested in X, Y, and Z. And then this led me to further my understanding, or like extending my knowledge by reading X, Y, and Z. Now this is a really important example about how you can make use of every single character. So this is a really, really long paragraph. You know, another amazing stepping stone in my knowledge of Egyptology was the Oxford Unique Summer School. Like, it just goes on and on. 403 characters. That's nearly a whole paragraph. This is how you can knock it down to 157. And you save so much space for you to analyse. We'll give your own thoughts on the points of law, which is the most important part, because like I said, they want to see what you think, not what an academic thinks, not what a book told you. And so you need to name the competitions though, and this is a good way of knocking that down. So now it just reads, the Oxford Unique Summer School introduced me to the transliteration of hieroglyphs and gave me confidence to participate in a challenging academic environment. See how much more concise that is. It just works, it flows a lot better. Okay, so now, how would you improve this? It's not a bad paragraph, I would say. Shadowing a barrister encouraged me to go to court and watch trials, allowing me to understand the role of a barrister, and especially how it contrasted to the work of a solicitor. But it doesn't give any indication of what solicitors do, or in their opinion, of what a solicitor or barrister does. So this is how I would improve it. So shadowing a barrister, first of all. Like I said, there's not equal opportunity to work experience, so show that you've gained it off merit, and watch trials. That's superfluous, because you go to court, unless you're the defendant or the victim, you're there to watch the proceedings anyway, so you don't have to say that. And you'll find in your personal statement that you say lots of obvious things that are not needed, so just make sure you get somebody else to read it, because what seems logical to you might not seem logical to another person. This is super vague, this bit, the role of a barrister and solicitor. What about their roles differ? Tell the admissions tutor. Yeah, this is a top tip, I would say. Always ask yourself, so what? Whenever you finish the sentence, say, so what in your head. If you can provide an answer, then your explanation is not full enough, because you have more to say. So, allow me to understand the preparation needed to construct an argument. What are these preparations? What arguments? It's too vague. This is how I would improve it. Winning the opportunity to shadow a barrister motivated me to attend court, enabling me to witness how barristers trade in the meaning of words and satisfy their clients' needs. At Clifton Chance Placement, I experienced a collaborative approach adopted by solicitors and noticed the contrast to a barrister's independent research. The latter is something which fascinates me. Is during my time in a clerk's office, which is like the person who gives the barristers the cases, I have relished the opportunity to read skeleton arguments, allowing me to assimilate and analyse complex information. Ultimately, this led me to construct the commended argument in a debate the chambers arranged on the prisoner's right to vote. I think this is 10 times better. Yes, I think it's more characters, but it's more conclusive. And also, you can see how the structure is being followed from the previous paragraphs that I showed you. Okay, so now we're getting to the end, so some do's and don'ts. Do communicate clearly in your personal statement. Like I said, I've read, I think, over 140 personal statements now, and people think they know what they're trying to say, but when I read it, I'm not in their head. Like, I don't know what they mean, so I always constantly saying, what do you mean by this? Be more clear. So get somebody else to read it, I would say. Use evidence, use detail. So if you say you've entered an essay competition, that's your evidence. Say what you discussed, though. You can't just name drop a list, like, it does not help anybody. Be positive, so don't have a personal statement that I think the law is very flawed in many ways, of course it is, and it's needs to change, and it's changed over the years. But you're going to be studying it for 3 years, so don't suggest that the law is a terrible thing in society. Have a positive outlook that can be changed if you bring up any negative instances of it. Be truthful. So on the other list you can see don't list or lie. Be truthful. So, for example, if you say you've read a book, make sure you've read it. There is a caveat here, though. Some of these massive books, like the Great Debates in Jurisprudence, are long books, really, really long. And you're not going to have to read it all. You can read a chapter, for example. I've just opened the book now, and there's a chapter on natural law. If you find that chapter the most intriguing, yeah, I'll say that in a second about the A-levels. So if the natural law chapter is most intriguing to you, then mention that this chapter is the most intriguing. And for me, for example, what interview, I wasn't asked about my personal statement at all. It was the icebreaker, and I don't think it was assessed. So you don't have to have read the entirety of the book, but for the skills that it would give you an interview, it's a good idea to be truthful about reading the entire thing. But if push comes to shove, just say that you've read the chapter, because you haven't explicitly said that you've read the book. You're saying that this chapter in this book was interesting, and then make sure it's specific to the course. So, for example, jurisprudence is the course at Oxford. It is a law degree, but it's the philosophy of law. So if you can engage in the philosophical aspects of the law, that's better than, you know, just engaging in, I think, legal activities that can apply to every other university. So now this part of the don'ts, make sure it's not cliched. So don't say from a young age, or don't include quotations, because that's taken away from what you have to say. That's somebody else's words, not yours. Unless you give reflections on them, it's just taken away from your character count. They want to know what you think, not what John Stuart Mill thought 100 years ago. Passion, don't use that word. Show that you have passion. Don't tell them that you have passion. And then A-levels, okay, so this is what I mean by A-levels. And if you do IB, whatever, it's applicable to all of them. So I've seen a few personal statements that structure their statement by saying, I study A-level psychology, philosophy, law. This has given me the skill to pursue a law degree. That's a curricular activity. You're expected to do that as part of the curriculum. You know, you have to get your A-levels, which is the offers that you get. That's just, you should have done that anyway. They want to see what you've done above your curricular activities. That being said, if you can make it flow, I have seen it done well, where you say, like, for example, if you study biology, that's not to do with the law. How can studying biology make you a better law student? Maybe if you can justify that in one sentence, that's enough, I would say. What A-levels do I need to go into law? So I did English, literature, Spanish, and philosophy. And I would say essay-based subjects like English Lit are essential, because obviously the arguments you're going to be dealing with are predominantly long judgments and texts. So you need to have that analytical capabilities that are derived from English. So don't list, because it's just a waste of your time. You know, you could provide them a list of everything you've done. It would probably be pages and pages long, but they want to see what you thought about the things in that list. Let me just read the chat, for example. There's actually lots of questions. What about if I say, studying politics A-level gave me an insight into... I think that's fine. But actually, you could just make it better by saying the thing that you got the insight into. Let's say, for example, you learn about the prorogation case, R and Miller. Just say, reading R and Miller. You don't say that you learned it from your A-levels. You can just make it seem like it's a super-curricular by being smart about how you word your personal statement. When did I take the LNAT? The 11th. Actually, I'll come read these questions in a minute. Let me just finish this. I'm nearly done. Negativity, yeah, don't be negative. The law has lots of bad things, but you can change that if you get into a top university and then go on to have a budding legal career. Too abstract. In my first personal statement draft, I talked about how the law is, or the question what about law is like there's a thought experiment in philosophy called the Knowledge Mary experiment, and they imagine Mary in a black and white room, and then when she leaves, she gets the qualia, the phenomenal aspects of seeing red for the first time. And I said that studying law is like that thought experiment, way too abstract, like nobody would understand apart from how my weird brain worked in connecting those things together. And then bad grammar, I've seen personal statements with just incorrect grammar. It's just sloppy, you know, you make sure you've got it correct. For example, like what some apostrophes are a big one. Make sure if there's plural, it's at the end of the S instead of before the S. And what other bad grammar things can I think of? Not capitalizing proper nouns is a big thing. If it's an essay competition or a book, make sure it's capitalized. And ideally, put it in apostrophes if it's a title of something. Okay, final tips. So there's a recommendation made for 90% academic and 10% extracurricular. Mine was 99% academic because I had lots of super-curricular activities that I wanted to show. And stuff like debate, football seems superfluous because it doesn't relate to the law. And this is a tip for law course 2 lawyers. You'll see in my personal statement I didn't include any Spanish-related activities to show why I wanted to study Spanish law. It's sufficient to have an A-star predicted grade or be a native speaker because the admissions onto the course is primarily based on you being a good enough law applicant for law course 1. At the end of the day, if there's not enough space on law course 2 and you've been made an offer, they'll move you to law course 1 anyway. So the main thing is law. And you can include your super-curricular Spanish activities in your teacher reference. Just make sure you have a good bond with your teacher, and then that would work, I would say. And then just give it a try. You know, some people get really scared about the mystifying process, but you'll never get in if you don't apply. So just apply, I would say. Yeah, and anyway, so now we've got to the end. So thank you so much for listening. That was pretty long. And now any of your questions, I'll try and read them by scrolling up in the chat. Yeah, question time. Okay. Would you say JSTOR articles would count as supercurricular? Yes. Yeah, 100%. Sometimes the titles are really long, so just say the academic that wrote like the article, and then maybe a brief synopsis of what the article is, but give your thoughts, don't just say what they wrote. One of your uni choices is law with a language, but all of the other choices are just law. So how do you include... Oh, okay, so I just covered that. So get your teacher to do the language side of it. And if you have an A star in Spanish or Italian or French, if you're applying for law with French law with Spanish law with Italian law, that's sufficient, because at the end of the day, you're applying for a law course. The year abroad is conditional on you doing good enough in your first year anyway. And at Cambridge, the year abroad is assessed on your first year qualifications, and then you apply in your second year for the year abroad in your third year. But you don't apply it with UCAS, so that's the difference between Oxford and Cambridge year abroad. But we go to the same unis. Yeah, okay. What other questions are there? Could you talk about the criminal justice system in my home country? Of course, it's your personal statement, so do it to what's personal to you. There's no discrimination about where you're applying from. Definitely talk about the Bangladeshi legal system. I'm not too familiar with it. What is a good personal statement idea you read? Regarding what? Okay, maybe a good personal statement idea that I've read is to do with again the philosophy of law, but about jury nullification. So there's a really famous, well, not that famous, but it's a case called the Colston 4. In Bristol during the BLM riots, people brought down a statue of a man called Edward Colston. He was a slave owner, and in so doing, they'd committed an offence contrary to the Criminal Damage Act 1978 or something like that. And they were clearly guilty, as in the words of the act made them guilty because they brought down the statue and damaged it. But the jury, although instructed by the judge to give back a guilty verdict, found them innocent. And that's a process called jury nullification, which is where a jury can acquit somebody or give a not guilty verdict by virtue of them thinking that the law, it does not apply in this situation, it'd be immoral for them to convict the person. And that's a really interesting moral debate that I saw. Would volunteering be beneficial? Of course, as long as, well, it doesn't have to be legal based, but ideally, like maybe you can volunteer in a legal clinic, in a court. I don't know how you do that. You have to really beg them, but I'm sure you could. What can I do now, just having started year 12 and not having any supercurriculars? Well, you're in an ideal situation because, an ideal position, because all of the supercurricular activities for this year are being updated on the Questa database. So just go through them one by one and apply to as many as you can. I got massive FOMO because I started applying to them in like January, and all the ones from the previous year had like already finished. So I just did as many as I could after that, like literally every single one if I had time. I just went through them systematically, and you'll end up winning more if you do more competitions. I wanted to ask if you could help, if you got help from any teachers at best. What teachers did you ask? So yes, I got help. I think you went to my school. So thank you for coming. I got help from Mr. What's his name? The law guy. I forgot his name. But him, he was good. He gave me an interview. I had a mock interview with Miss. Actually, I probably shouldn't say their names, but the philosophy teacher, Miss Moffat. Okay, nobody's gonna know her anyway. But yeah, she was excellent, really good interviews. They were really friendly interviews, I would say, but they weren't anything like my actual Oxford interview. They were more about asking me abstract questions like, how would you describe an apple to a blind person? These are like the traditional Oxbridge questions that people feel they'll be asked to interview. They don't do that anymore. They can't do that. Like all the mysterious things of like walking into a room and having a rugby ball thrown at you and then seeing how you react. That just doesn't happen anymore. They ask you about the subject you apply to. So law, make sure that you can justify your personal statement, and be open-minded in the interview, I would say. Hopefully I can do another one of these for the interview. I have lots of tips to give you on that. But just send me a message on LinkedIn if you can, because obviously I know you in person. Elna, question. In my PS, I mentioned various legal aspects, international constitutional law, whilst also a little bit about ethics. Would you say it's... Well, it's all jurisprudence. So if you look at natural law, Aquinas has lots to say about natural law. There is essentially like a rift in jurisprudential theory about what makes law, whether the law is morally adjacent or not. Natural lawyers say yes, it is, because it's like derived from God's mandates and stuff like that. And then a guy called H.L.A. Hart, who posited legal positivism, which is the idea that what makes law is just that it's made with due process, so like parliamentary sovereignty, whatever Parliament deems to be law is law. So look into that, I would say. If you can make it jurisprudential, do, because you can easily do that with Aquinas. And another interesting thing about international law, there's a guy called J.L. Austin who talks about a gunman theory of law. He's somebody who Hart critiques in a book called The Concept of Law. The gunman theory of law is essentially the law is made by a sovereign, and it's a threat backed by a sanction. Sorry, a command backed by a sanction, which is like a threat. And the sovereign is somebody who's habitually obeyed and habitually obeys nobody else. So that's like in the sense of a monarch was like hundreds of years ago. And obviously that's a bit outdated, but you might want to look into that. Duke of Edinburgh worth it? No, no way. I think I did like bronze. I mean, do it if you like to go outdoors and stuff, but I think I started doing it but just gave up. They don't really care, to be honest. But it's good, like, you know, knowing how to read a map and stuff. Does this event count as a lecture? I'm not that much of a narcissist, so no. But I don't know. I wouldn't include it in your personal statement. They don't know me, apart from the people at my college. Would you be possibly sending your personal? Oh, when will I be sending my feedback? I have like way too many. I'm not even sure I'm gonna get through them. I'll try my best to. Now that I've seen your name, I'll try my best to read yours. My question is about law with a language. It's two different courses. No, it's not a language. It's the law of the country, law of Spanish law. And that's the same at Cambridge. So you're learning the law, obviously in Spanish, but it's the law of Spain, not Spanish literature or something. You can. I think I know somebody from Scotland who he did like an accredited course, he did it externally for French, and they did accept it. Obviously, it was conditional on him getting like a certain level of fluency in French. So you'd have to email the college that you're applying to if you could take an outside course. Can we get the PowerPoint link? Yeah, I'll send that to whoever needs to get that. When did I do the LNAT? I did it on the 11th of October last year. I did it as late as possible. I think that's the best way to do it because you need to prepare as much as possible. I'm making a resource for that. Hopefully, in the coming days, you guys can hopefully get that. But a cheat code for the LNAT is get our BTO. It's like £60. It's expensive. Maybe your school can get it for you. Everybody who did amazing used our BTO because it's so much harder than the actual exam. I didn't use it. I just got a decent like average grade. But that's what I would have done upon reflection. But if not, get a book called Mastering the LNAT by Mark Shepherd. That was also really good. Do you think it's a good idea to link my volunteering with children to my interest in family law? Yes, 100%. That's a really good link. Law entrance exam. You know a lot about law theories, perspectives, general already. Is there a technique for this that you haven't mentioned? Reading, like read as much as you can. Let me think of how I got interested in this stuff. No, you just have to read as many books as you can. Oh, hack, okay. Use audiobooks. I listen to audiobooks on 2 times speed. It means that I can finish the book 2 times faster than somebody who reads it. So that's how I've read a lot of books, I would say. Obviously, for textbooks, it's kind of hard. You can't, unless you get an ebook version, then you can get software that reads it to you. I'm really lazy, so I just like to get things done quickly. When actually is the LNAT deadline for Oxbridge? The 16th of October. It's the same date as the UCAS deadline, but don't sit your exam on the 16th of October because, like, if something goes wrong, you can't rebook. You know, your application won't be considered. Also, you have to bring ID to the LNAT exam. It's like a driving test centre. If you don't bring it, they won't let you sit it. My friend had to, it really messed her up. So make sure you bring ID. Is it necessary to include books or lectures that have motivated you to study your subject, or is it sufficient to show engagement with the subject? However, I'm wondering if I should still mention some books. So obviously, I don't know about CS. Yes, I would say include books and lectures because it's just, you know, it's that undergraduate level. But if you're doing CS, that's really practical, you know, about coding. So I would include the programs like as a thread in your essay. Like essays were mine, you can do programs in yours. How long? Oh, okay. So that was 42. I got 27, which is the average for an offer holder this year. It goes up year on year. The average in general this year was 22, so it was above average. But I only spent, I think, maybe 3 weeks. Don't do that. Don't spend 3 weeks. But I'm just saying you can get a decent score with 3 weeks of practice. And then my practice was from books, not Arbitio, but it should have been from Arbitio. Make sure you get Arbitio, not sponsored. I haven't done any essay competitions. Would it be a disadvantage? No, not at all. So I was saying, obviously, essay comps are really good. They're amazing. I would say they are a cheat code, but they're not needed because not everybody has access to them. Lots of them are for the UK only, for example. So if you're an international student, it'd be harder to find them. But you need to sit down and think about books that you've read, stuff that you've engaged with, because you will find that you've done so many more super-curricular activities than you think you have. So it's not the end of the world. I'm going to apply for Cambridge. Yeah, I am flooded with questions. I'm not sure if we could collect all of them, and then maybe I could like get back to the ones that I haven't answered. Cambridge with major in astrophysics, currently in middle school. Wow, that's early. Any tips for studying? Only use active methods of revision. It's the only scientifically proven method of study. So anything that is active. So for me, for example, all my essay-based subjects, I ask myself questions, did practice plans and blurting plans. That's the only way I say that you can study, in my opinion. Can I get your LinkedIn? It's my full name. Yeah, it's my full name, but it probably is linked in the chat. We don't have majors and minors in the UK. Nope. I don't know what dot product is. That's the book. Yeah, the link sent. This question for year 13. No, for everybody, but obviously year 13 priority because they're applying in a few weeks. Also, go early for LNAT because yes, like there's so many issues. Like make sure it's not on the last day. How can you make paragraphs flow in your PS if they are not related to each other? You have to force it then. Obviously, don't make it so forced, but like let's say, so my environmental law paragraph and the bit about morality don't really link, so I had to include another paragraph before it to make it able to flow. So you have to work around that. It's a case-by-case basis. I'm not sure if you've sent me your personal statement, but if I read it, hopefully I would have helped you on how to make it flow. If you can give more detail, maybe I could help more. How much is Arbitio? I think around £60. You can get it cheaper though, and your school might buy it for you. Mine didn't, but you know, hopefully yours do. In my personal statement, I try to talk about 4 different types of law and my engagement with that rather than jurisprudence. Is that still okay for Oxford? Yes, you don't have to talk about jurisprudence. That's just one. That would be one type of law. So you don't have to. Obviously, the course is just called that. But and it is a mandatory module. Like you have to study jurisprudence if you apply to Oxford. I don't think that's true. It's not true at Cambridge. You have other mandatory modules, but not jurisprudence. So that'll be fine. I'm doing lit, French, Guard politics, and sociology. Is it best to drop French or sociology in terms of subject strength? So the thing about subject strength is like it's a myth. I think like all A levels are hard. Okay, like not to diss any subjects, but like maybe if you're applying for law and you've like got drama or art, that might not be an ideal subject. Something that's essay based like English lit. But you know, art brings so many more aspects to your legal conversation. You know, copyright, IP laws that could come from art. So you can link the law to everything, is what I'm saying. And one of my friends took art A level and got into Oxford. So can you talk about Sharia law? Yeah, of course you can, especially if that's part of your culture. Also, I didn't really answer your question about dropping French or sociology. Well, if you're applying for law with French law at Oxford, obviously you need French. I would say though, don't do 4 A levels. It's not needed. Your offer's given on 3, and it's 3 A's, which is high enough. You know, it's just so much more stress. I was going to do like I think politics as well, but it's just not needed like at all. Yeah, so what Sharia law? It doesn't Sharia just mean law anyway? So it'd be like law. But yeah, can I take LNAT at year 12 and then again in year 13? Yes, you can. But why would you do that? No, I don't think you can actually, because you'd be applying in year 13, and plus it only lasts for 1 year. Like you'd have to, so for example, if you're on a gap year now, you'd have to resit your LNAT. I just wouldn't. It's just a waste of your money, to be honest, because it's like £80 to sit the exam. Do you have any LNAT essay tips? Yeah, I do. They're gonna come in the LNAT folder, book, or whatever. Also, I think I've emailed them to quite a few people, but if you drop your email like privately, I could send that to you. What tips do you have for current year 12 students who won't be doing the personal statement? Oh yeah, right, because they're scrapping. Okay, so this is another point I'd like to make. Thanks for reminding me. So, at the end of the day, the personal statement is getting scrapped. I think a sneaking suspicion. This is what a tutor told me at Oxford, was that they don't know who's written their personal statement. Like, they don't actually have a way of physically telling. And different schools give different amounts of help, and there's like online services and stuff like that. So they don't actually know how much of it is yours. So it's important. Obviously, it's a holistic application, but the way that the personal statement is used, I think, by some colleges, is that if something stands out in there that makes you interesting as a candidate, then it's useful. But if it's just like, like I've read this amount of books and I like the law, it's not going to be that useful to you because, like I said, they're scrapping it anyway. So make sure there's some like controversy in there, something interesting about you as a person that makes the reader think twice about you as an applicant, because you're giving anonymous data. You're giving anonymous data a breath of life with your personal statement. But the tip for the Year 12 doing it next year is it's basically going to be the same thing. It's going to be questions anyway, so you still have to give that anonymous data a vision. So the tips still apply. Obviously, it just won't be 4,000 characters. Yeah, it won't be valid in Year 12. Yeah. Wait, can we not do the LNAT? Yes, you can if you're applying for other universities that are not Oxford and Cambridge. But make sure you do it before the February window. There's 2 windows, so if you sit the LNAT from now until maybe January, February, you get your results in February. If you sit it after February, you get your results a lot later, and that can cause problems when you're applying to unis because they get your results like later. If you could go back in time and tell yourself before you started writing your personal statement, one sentence, what would it be? Wow, good question. Okay, this is like my favourite quote. There's a guy called Oscar Wilde. He's a very famous writer. Read his book called The Picture of Dorian Gray. He said that comparison is the thief of joy. And I think that's a way to live your life. Don't compare yourself to other people just because they've done 50 million essay competitions and had like 12 pupillages and stuff. Doesn't make them a better person than you are. You have an equally good chance of getting in. Like if you can show that you are a worthy candidate, and it's something I hope you can do. What were your A-level results? I got A star in English Lit. I did really well. I got like 90% in English Lit. I was really proud of that. A star in philosophy. I did really well in that. A in Spanish, 1 mark off an A star. I'm really salty about that one. And it was 88% for an A star. The grade boundaries this year were really harsh. And then A in my EPQ, which was again 44 out of 50, 1 mark off an A star. But yeah, it won't be valid though. Yeah. Yeah. Did you make Anki flashcards for your A-level results? No. I do know people that use Quizlet. That's a really good active revision resource. So the way I revised all my A-levels was, so because they're all essay-based, mostly, I made a database I love databases, and database of essay plans, and it would give myself 10 minutes to give a coherent argument that might convince an examiner. And after I did that for 6 months, I got pretty good at coming up with a argument out of thin air for any question. And if you think about it, they can only ask you a certain amount of questions because the course only covers a limited amount of topics. For example, for philosophy at A-level AQA specification, they can only ask you 25 markers basically across the whole board. So if you memorize 25 essay plans, then you have something to say whatever they give you. I'm part of LSE Pathways to Law, so when I talk about work experience provided by them that I chose, do I mention it was from the Sutton Trust? I would mention Sutton Trust, I would, because it's also a widening participation scheme, and obviously Oxford and Cambridge are big into widening access because traditionally the universities have been, echo chambers of privilege, so definitely mention that. Do let us know how you find Best of luck to your degree. Thank you. What are my results? Did you do AQA philosophy? Yes, I did. How do you revise for the LNAT section? So you need to, again, they ask you 3 questions. You choose one. You have 40 minutes to write maximum 700 words. And don't try to hit that because it goes really quick. How to revise? You need to think of I was lucky because I studied philosophy, so you can bring in philosophy to any argument, because philosophy is basically how you argue. So I got asked my question on whether the government should be allowed to torture a terrorist to find the location of a bomb. Luckily, I did about 10 practice essays, and in my practice essay, I had discussed like the state's power to use capital punishment, and that's sort of similar. It's a similar scenario. So you need to think of broad questions that could map onto different questions. It's the same for A levels, I would say. Our essay plans are like points for each paragraph. Yeah. So P1, P2, P3, intro and conclusion. For English Lit, you need to have very good thesis statements for any essay subject. So what you're going to argue in this essay, I will discuss X, Y, and Z, and make sure you evaluate that statement throughout the essay, because the high level skill in all A levels is evaluation, is what you think again. Because anybody can memorize like what Plato said, what Descartes said, but they want to know what you thought about what they said, because that's what you're learning at the end of the day. So if your thesis statement is like Margaret Atwood discusses the extent to which totalitarian governments like oppress individuals, say like on the one hand, one might say, on the other hand, make it evaluative. What tips do you have for EPQ? I don't know what to do, but obviously I want to do it on law. So do you want me to give you a topic, or? Well, tips for EPQ, make sure you follow, like, you tick the boxes, because it's a long process about, like, researching and initial ideas and stuff. I didn't, like, do that. Like, I think I was busy with my Oxford application. So, like, I just ended up writing an essay and then coming up with, like, random things that I'd researched when it was just retrospective. So I think that's why I didn't score full marks. So make sure you follow the process, like, be fully engaged with the extended nature of the project instead of just writing a 5,000 word essay. Were there any other things you did apart from essay planning? No, not really, because that's like where you get your main marks. I suppose for the 12 marks, that's the hardest bit to get marks in, because you need to give as much AO1, which is just memorization, as you can. So maybe, again, that's limited, the amount of 12 marks they can ask you. It's probably like each chapter of the white AQA philosophy book is probably a 12 marker. So if you just practice on how to articulate yourself so you get those 12 marks, you'll basically get 4 marks in the exam, probably. So ask your teacher for help. Could you share your LNAT essay plans? Yeah, I'll send that to whoever I need to at Questa, so they can like put them on the Discord or whatever. But I've like I have like an email that I send to lots of people who ask me for LNAT help, and they're all there. Sorry, my tongue's getting tired now. What books did you do for English Lit A level, and how did you revise them? So I did Margaret Atwood's Handmaid's Tale, Frankenstein, that's paper 2 prose. Othello, paper 1 drama. Sorry, I did Edexcel example. And A Streetcar Named Desire, paper 1 drama. Paper 3 is Poetry, I did Romantics and Poems of the Decade. How did you revise for them? Oh yeah, sorry, of course, English is quote banks. You need to know your quotes. For Edexcel, thank God, we get the books in the exam. So instead of memorizing quotes in full, I'd memorize page numbers, and then in the exam, I'd flip to like page 98, and there's a quote in Margaret Atwood's book about her feeling like the protagonist, Offred, feeling like a prize pig. So like you talk about the alliteration, the plosive P, and how it's like oppressive and blah blah blah. And yeah, how did you maintain mental stamina during the MCQ part? Alright, so you need to tell yourself, yeah, you're here for 95 minutes. It's really daunting. It is a test of stamina, but it's only one sitting. Like, you're going to have to get through it, and I think the LNAT is probably more important than the personal statement, because it's a test of your, I think, a poor test of what you'd be like as a law student, because obviously, like, yeah, law students have to read lots of information and analyze arguments, but they don't do it in 95 minutes. So I have beef with the LNAT anyway, but you need to tell yourself that it just has to be done. And you might second guess yourself. Like I think, because there's an option to flag questions on the software, but only flag questions that you like were stuck between 2 answers. Because if you flag questions that you're like, oh, I don't know, maybe I was right, you're gonna go back, change it, and you'll probably get it wrong. Because like that's what I kept on doing. So I'd make sure I didn't have that for my actual exam. Yeah, adrenaline will keep you high. Don't worry. I'm applying for law and French law for all my choices. I wrote a bit on French law on the freedom of expression. Is that not needed? No, that's cool though, because so in Spain, for example, they had I was speaking Spanish. They had something called La Ley Mordaza, which is like gag laws. which is about freedom of expression as well. I could have spoken about that, but it just didn't fit with my essays. I think that would have been cool, like considering I'm applying for Spanish law. But they also give you a Spanish interview, like a Spanish language test, if you apply for law with a language, law with a law studies in Europe. So that's where they test like your capabilities for the law course too, I would say. But if you can make it fit in like well, then do. But don't say like, because I'm applying to law course too, the freedom of expression in France really like piqued my interest, blah blah. I think I'm fine. I can answer as many questions as you want. Maybe like if we do like 10 more minutes, I'm fine to do that. Yeah, exactly. They have interesting secular laws there, so you have to like see the merits of like it's obviously really controversial. Did you use current affairs as an example to back up your arguments in the essay part of the LNAT? Yes, that's you should. Like I would recommend you do that. That's a um, really good way of showing your current awareness. So, for example, in mine, because it was about the terrorists being tortured, I talked about also like after 9/11, for example, there was this horrible prison called Abu Ghraib, and they like tortured people who obviously Guantanamo Bay as well. They tortured people who didn't even have trials, and I talked about how that is going against like the rule of law, which is, by the way, if you read the book by Tom Bingham, it's really really good. I'm going to scroll up and okay, another question. I went to Cambridge 4-day law residential. Should I mention that I was at Cambridge since I'm applying to? Oh, yeah, they don't care. They're not that petty. It's a good yeah, it's a really good university, second best in the country. Not quite Oxford, but still really good. And so they'd be impressed by that. I'm going to scroll up and just see if I miss any from before. It might be too far up though. Okay. Yeah, so I went through my whole personal statement. Yeah. What do you mean by A levels? I explained that. Studying law, studying politics, I explained that. A levels are equivalent to HL. Yes. Our lawyer is well paid, very well paid. Well, it depends. Like criminal barristers are having a rough time right now, but generally, yes, they are well paid. I took the LNAT 16th of October. If you were declined and you were given the chance to change one sentence in your personal statement, what would it be? Change one sentence. Let me go back. Hold on. Wait, that's too long. I don't know. I was really proud of my personal statement. Like super proud. Maybe this bit here. The Criminal Damage Act 19. It's a bit clunky. Like the analysis of a modern context. I don't think it's needed. I could have saved characters and then maybe given my final sentence more like welly. I wanted to ask if you got help from teachers. Yeah. Okay, I think that's it. I'm just gonna scroll up a little bit more. Hi, one of my uni choices is law with a language. I think I answered that one. I think maybe I answered quite a few. Imagine you're watching. Okay, there aren't any internships for my secondary school students. Where I live, will readings and online seminars suffice? Yes, of course, because like I said, then not everybody has access to them. They don't expect you to have access to them. They are impressive, obviously, but if your dad works at a law firm and you work there over the summer, that's not as impressive as somebody who went out their way to try and get that work experience. So yeah, they don't what's it called? Discriminate. How many characters? Words again. 4,000 characters, 47 lines, whichever one comes first. MOOCs are an excellent way of getting that experience. Yeah. Also, there's a really good one called Forage. It's like MOOCs but for law firms. And they offer like law firms like Allen and Overy, Latham Watkins. They offer little like mini work experience, virtual work experiences. Yeah. How to get into Oxford? Get your get your pick taken by school. No. Um. Yeah, I think I answered that JSTOR one. Potentially, if you gas it on your personal statement for how it helped you. Yeah. Sorry, what is this? Okay. What were my what were my other four choices? Wait, hold on. Do you think someone is at a disadvantage if they have no work experience in their PS but loads of work? No, not at all. They're really like both unis are really into access and outreach now. I think they're excellent for them. So they won't like there will be no reason for them to think that you'd be at a disadvantage. What were my other four choices? Oxford, Durham, LSE, York, and NCH, which is the new College of Humanities. I think it's called Northeastern Uni London now, but it's a private uni, so you can apply it outside of UCAS. Yeah, get LinkedIn. Yeah, get LinkedIn. It's so good. Like, add as many people as you can. Will getting into good college increase my chance of getting a girlfriend? Uh, I don't know. Maybe if it makes you an interesting person, probably. Jake, especially Jake, as he has. Thank you, thanks. Learn how to spell college first. Some people have lost causes. That is also true. Um, English isn't my first language. Okay. Uh, did I get offer from all five? No, UCL. Well, from the six of them, I applied to six. So did I get UCL rejected me because I applied for yeah, law with Hong Kong law. So it's 2 years in England and 2 years in Hong Kong, and it's only got 10 spaces. And I think my personal statement was not there wasn't enough about Hong Kong in it. Tips on choosing an Oxford college. That's a really good question. So essentially, like it comes down to whether it's a modern or old college, if it's pretty or clapped, if it has good accommodation like ensuite, self-catering. Most of the Oxford colleges they have halls like dining halls and they give you subsidised meals. The professors that go there, although sometimes the professors move, so like don't just like don't follow a professor to a college. I would say the main one though is accommodation because you're living there for 3 or 4 years. You know, like you want to have a nice place to stay. So that's why finding a nice balance between an old college, which has like beautiful architecture, and then modern accommodation is really good. And that's why I chose Corpus. Also because it was the first college that I had seen, like I stayed at in my residential. Um, yeah. Is Oxford food halal? Yeah, they have halal options. Um, yeah, there is a food. How do you know that? There is a food truck called Hassan's, like really good for kebab. So okay, I guess maybe at 8:15 we could end it unless you guys have any more questions. Is there more to it? It was nice. It was since I was a little disappointed. Well, it's one of the smaller colleges at Oxford. So it was founded like the 15th century by a guy called Bishop Fox, and it had more grounds, but Christchurch took them in a bet. I think that's what I heard, like 300 years ago. So it was bigger, but it has the accommodation is like across the road from it in this older building. It's like called Oldman. There's a few others. Um, but as in the main college part that you saw, if that's what you saw, like basically the college. Um, but it's pretty beautiful actually. Don't diss my college. New college is really nice. Yeah. Do Oxford weigh eights and nines at the same grade? I would think so. There's not much distinction between the two. I think I got at GCSE I got 10 eights and nines, 1 6 in DT because I sat that year early and like just hated the subject, and then I got a 7 I think. So I didn't have like all nines. Um, Thank you, thanks. I try my best. Would really appreciate if you read my PS and get back to me. I probably sound desperate in my Google form. Did you send it on that Google form? I'll look up your name and I'll read it. Don't worry. It's only been 2 weeks. Do you have any tips on writing essays? I'm really struggling. Yes. I do. Like, I entered and got lost, so I left. Oh, maybe you have to give it a second chance though. But I was only joking. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. I think if I hadn't applied to Corpus, I would have applied to Lincoln. It's got like that's really beautiful, and it's got good accommodation as well. I think that's the one with Ivy on it, if you know it. Yeah. So writing essays. I think generally you need a clear thesis, which is in the introduction, what you're going to argue, and of making an essay interesting. Again, you have to be evaluative. So weigh up arguments, and your own argument has to be challenged by strong counter arguments. Don't straw man argument. Make sure that the argument in its strongest form, and on top of that, the conclusion has to be witty, I would say. So on my LinkedIn, I have some of my English essays posted, and like in the intro, I bring out like rhetorical questions and comments on political affairs. It kind of just shows that you are aware of what your surroundings are. Magdalen is beautiful as well, and really good floor. Don't apply to Christchurch. If yeah, it's got a bit of a stigma. It's beautiful though, like really really nice. How many hours of reading did you do before application process? A lot. I read. Oh, I couldn't really give you a thing. Maybe like 2 hours a day, but I didn't read every single day. So like in a week, it'd like amount to 2 hours a day. Thanks for your advice. Good luck at college. King's College, yeah, for real. Someone went to E&M in that college from my school. Okay. I'm the only one in my year applying to Oxbridge, and my school has offered literally no support for my PS or the application process as a whole. So would you be? Yeah, I can. I have a form on my LinkedIn if you could put it there, because there's lots of statements I have to get through. No, it's not. It's not at all. It's necessary for career progression, but it's really good to find resources there. Like that's where I found lots. Um, is it at Flowery? Is there mainland people, or is the economy as screwed as the news says? I don't know. I don't think we're that screwed, to be honest. Some parts of Flowery, some parts are not. Like I'm from my area is not nice. So Christchurch is like the Oxford College. You know, like the stairs were used for Harry Potter. So there's some people think it's like a bit what's it called? Oh, what's the word for it? Snobby. But I don't know. I'm not that quick to judge. I think it's just very beautiful. But for example, like the pre-reading from Christchurch, they got like textbooks to read, and my college gave more introductory books to the course. So like maybe the workload is different depending on the college, but that's another issue. Wait, don't apply to it. What did it say? I didn't quite catch it. Oh, I didn't say anything about applying to Christchurch. You should apply. Apply to the college that you want. Yeah. All right. Well, 2 minutes, and then I think I'll end because yeah, I need to go. But yeah, if you have just any final questions. Oh, thank you. Good luck in your A levels. Yeah, sure. I'll just stop sharing my screen. What is the best degree for money? Probably what at Oxford. I think statistically it's economics and management. Law is really good. I think in the House of Commons the predominant degree is a law degree. Yeah, but you shouldn't really be doing a degree for the money, to be honest, because you have to study it for a long time. How old am I? I'm 18. Yeah, you can ask me a question in a year if you remember. Oh right, yeah, sure. Just reach out on LinkedIn or whatever, wherever you want. Oh yeah, maybe I should just say that all of this is my opinion, by the way. Like I'm not affiliated with any college outside of the fact that I'll be studying there in a week. So it's personal opinion. Yeah, good to start as early as you can. Alright, well, 1 minute I suppose. Yeah, LinkedIn. So, it takes me a while sometimes to get back to you because sometimes my DMs get flooded, but I'll do my best. Just say you're from Questa, and then I'll like prioritize you. All right. Well, yeah, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Thank you so much for having me. Hopefully, you guys found it useful. But yeah. Good luck with your applications and best of luck with your future endeavours.